a great value for students, whether they're, again, middle school, high school, or college. If you want to discover the good works that the Lord has for you, look at the workmanship that He designed you with, and let that give you confirmation, affirmation, or direction on where are those good works? What are those good works? How do I walk in what I think they are? And I think one of the best tools that this gives students is an opportunity. Hey y'all, welcome to the My Place podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Mary McSwain, and I'm joined, as I always am, by my dad, Jay McSwain.
And as it always is, it's good to be joined by your dad, Jay McSwain, Mary.
Okay, Dad, before we jump into our conversation today, I haven't done this in a while, but I know you always have one on deck. Do you have any book recommendations for us?
Well, as you know, I don't read one at a time. And because you gave me the questions ahead of time, I actually brought one. John Maxwell, it's called Leadership, and the book was written about 6 years ago. And a lot of times I look at when the book is written, and a lot of times I won't buy it if it's a 5-6-year-old book. But I did this one, and it is really, really good. Maxwell, for people your age, you may or may not know him, but I know when I first started with Place and was traveling, airports used to have great bookstores. They're not so great now. They put little sections, but you could go into whole bookstores, and on the end cap, John Maxwell was everywhere. He was the leadership guru. But the book Leadership, it's a really good book, and I'm reading it. And then there's a book that I didn't want to wait to go get it. I wanted it instantly, and I may end up going and buying the physical copy. But a lot of times I'll take my Kindle or my Nook. This is the Kindle. And one of my favorite authors is a guy named Arthur Brooks. And he is a Christian, but he doesn't write necessarily from a Christian perspective, even though he is a Christian. And I think he teaches at Harvard. But I think this is my third book by him. It's called The Meaning of Life. And it is rocking my world. He's like a sociologist, does a lot of things about neuroscience. And so I'm reading that. And a couple of others, one of my friends wrote a book and has asked me to read it and give thoughts. So I'm reading his book right now also. But that's some on my reading list right now.
Wow, that's a good collection right there.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued. I might pick up one of those when you're done with it.
And I'm actually reading another one by Maxwell called The Charismatic Leader. Oh. And it's a good one. It's a little thinner book, but it's a good book too.
So you have 4-ish right now that you're juggling. How long does it take you to get through them?
It'll take me probably a week and a half to get through those.
All 4 of them?
Yeah, I mean, like I've read this morning. I went to bed last night reading. So I'll read probably 3 or 4 hours a day, maybe.
That's wild.
Most of the time early in the morning, late at night.
The library continues to grow.
It continues to grow. Yeah.
I have a recommendation for the audience. It's not a book. It's a movie, actually. But as you know, I had my NG3 girls over, and NG3 is a ministry that I'm a part of that works with high schools, and it's similar to FCA, but instead of doing all athletes all together, they take each team and pair a leader from the community with them to do mentoring, discipleship, small group, whatever dynamic works for that team. And this spring, we've been going through the book of Esther. And at the beginning of the spring, we were trying to figure out what book we wanted to go through, and I gave them the options of Ruth or Esther. And I told them there's this amazing movie that I used to watch with my mom on Esther, and if we do Esther, because y'all haven't read it before, then we could have a movie night, sleep over, watch the movie. And so we've been going through Esther. It's been amazing. I could talk for so long about everything that we've gotten to learn and just look at together. And it's been so cool, the coffee shop that we meet at, watching them talk to the baristas and them ask, okay, so what are y'all going through this week? What did you talk about last week? And even some of the baristas that I know there will come up to me. There was a week or two where I wasn't there and the girls still met, and they said, I heard their conversation. It was just incredible that one, they met without their leader and there were so many of them there, but also that the level of depth that they were getting to in their conversation. So that's been really cool. But my recommendation is a movie called One Night with the King. It's currently on Amazon Prime. It's free. It's about the story of Esther.
Hold on, you got to have Amazon Prime, though, to get it free.
Yes, you do. I'm sure it's on other platforms. I can't send you to Blockbuster anymore. But if you have Amazon Prime, it is free on there right now to stream. And obviously it's historical fiction, so they take some creative liberties, but I think the liberties that they did take just moved the story along. And it's an incredible movie. I think it just gives visual and art to how artistic the story already is. So that's my recommendation. If anybody's looking for a movie to watch, One Night with the King on Amazon Prime, highly recommend. So we're going to jump right into our conversation today.
And if people who watch this, not listen, notice we have a different image up today because we're going to talk about something. We've hinted at this a little bit, but a really cool weekend that you and I got to do back in April. And it just keeps giving because even tonight, you and I are meeting with parents and students, even tonight, as we have been doing the last several weeks. So that's why we have a different slide up.
Yes, as you mentioned, we have mentioned it multiple times in the last couple episodes that we've done since then, but we wanted to dedicate a whole episode, really a whole conversation to it, just to share with other people the value that we've seen other people have in it and just dive into more of what it was and the fruit that we've been seeing from that weekend.
And can I say one thing? I will just say, if you're a church leader and you have the ability to, we would love to come in and do it with you, but the ability to do a weekend like what we did and the one-on-one times that we're having, hey, call us up, email us, whatever you need, get a hold of us because it was and it is powerful.
So for context, for those of y'all who either are just now joining us or it's been a while since you listened to our last conversation, back in April, we hosted a parent-student place experience where parents and their students, their kids, they all came as a family and went through some of our place material. They've been doing some coaching since.
You did teaching of the students. Mm-hmm. I did the parents. We did several sessions together, which was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was very dynamic. There was a lot of moving around. There was chances where the parents got to talk to their kids about it. Everyone got to do some reflection, some conversation, some small group discussion. So that's really what our conversation is focusing on today, is that parent-student dynamic. But before we jump into some of the weekend, I wanted to ask you, what's some of the best parenting advice you've ever gotten?
I'll give one. And when we were at Moody several weeks ago, we were with my friend Tim Downey, who taught there for many, many years. And you and I have been going for the last couple. I've been going for 20 years there. But Tim gave me one of the best parenting advices I've ever gotten. Tim is my age, but he had his children young in life. I had my children late in life. And I don't know, you and your sister were maybe 3 and 5, 4 and 6, and his kids were grown. And we're driving home. I remember where we were on the road, and I was telling Tim, you and your sister were in the back seat. And I said, Tim, I love this age. I love this age of where my kids are. They can be in the back seat fighting, and I'll turn around and scream at them and tell them to shut up. And we'll walk in the house and one of them will say, Mom, you need to be nice to Dad today. He's having a bad day. And my friend Tim gave me this advice. I've used it with a lot of these parents that have been going through place. I had Sunday night a really somewhat sad, hard conversation with a couple who their kid they were in the weekend. But what Tim told me, this is the advice. He said, Jay, what you like about it where your children are at this age, 3, 5, 4, 6, he said, you can control them. And he said, if you're a wise parent, you will recognize that every year it's less about control and more about influence. And I've never forgotten that. So that's one of those pieces of advice that I have consciously, intentionally had to use more than once now that you're not 4 years old anymore. But that's one of them. That's one of the best pieces of advice I got.
This might be a leading question, but do you think knowing who your kid is better equips you to influence them well?
Oh, exclamation point, yes.
Because I would guess if you are trying to influence someone, you have to know your audience to know how to influence them well, or else you won't have equity with them. And if you know who they are, if you know how to communicate with them, if you know how they think, how they feel, how they relate, then you have a better chance, you're better equipped to influence. Mm-hmm. In the same way, you could argue God knows how to influence us best because he formed us. He knows us. So he knows how to speak to us. He knows the people we need around us to speak into our lives to best influence us. And in the same way, a parent knows their child. And so the better you know them, the better equipped you are to influence them. And Proverbs 22:6, train them up in the way that they should go. So when they are old, they will not depart from it.
Yeah, that's good.
So what gave you the initial idea for this weekend? Because it kind of just bloomed out of nowhere.
Yeah. So the weekend, my friend Kevin Heck leads a parenting class that I think they've had the class probably about 4 years. And the couples that are in it, they mostly have kids in middle school and high school. Some of them have college kids, but most of them are middle school and high school. And we just realized we needed, or Kevin did with the student ministry. And so he started this class. And it's really crazy because the class is a large, small, what we call small group on Sunday morning. They have 40 to 50-ish in there a week. And that means that there's probably about, in a given month, probably 70 people come through that class, parents. And when we did it, we had 70 total, 37 parents and 33 students. But what gave the genesis for doing it was Kevin asked me to come in a couple of weeks and speak on spiritual gifts as it relates to parents knowing them with their kids. And as we kept talking, I don't remember who came up first with it, but we came up with the idea, why don't we offer a weekend? And then you and I actually spent several days away preparing what that weekend would look like. And I will just say this, so far, it has exceeded anything I could have imagined. And we've decided at our church with the student ministry, we're going to start doing it once or twice a year. It's been that impactful in the lives of families and students.
So this weekend, the whole experience is birthed out of this parent class, but it's for families, it's for parents and students. From a parent's perspective, what value could this experience give to them?
Well, sitting right where we're sitting right now, last Friday night, I was sitting with a mother, and I feel like a lot of times she's very pushy on her children. And we talked about, let's have a code, you and I, that when you remember we did the fruit of the Spirit, controlled personality, where you take negative traits of your personality and you have to submit them to one of the 9 fruits of the Spirit. And she and I came up with, why don't, when I see you, we don't have to go into, if I see you in the halls of the church, to just say a question like, how's the fruit going? How's the fruit going? And that's her reminder to be able to exercise the fruit of the Spirit in some of those sometimes critical ways with her kids. And it is so cool. Like last Friday night, as you know, Mary, I normally don't sit down with more than one person, but a family wanted to meet together. And we sat till 9:30 on a patio outside our church. And it was mom and dad and the two sisters. One's 6th grade, one is 10th grade, 9th grade. And watching them cry, watching the dad be so transparent in front of his two kids and them crying, but encouraging one another based on how they were created. And it was all focused on going through place with them. Again, I've done so many. This is my stack right here of the one-on-ones. I could just take every one of them and tell story after story. You know, I'm a storyteller. But boy, there's stories in these as I've been meeting with them one-on-one.
And what a powerful reflection of even the first story that you shared of accountability and how simple that can be. But whether it's with somebody at your church who knows you well, whether it's with a parent and a child or spouses or people that you're walking through life with, when you know yourself and when you know somebody else, how much more effective and powerful accountability can become, because you know exactly what the other person is talking about and you don't have to go in depth to be reminded that I know you and I know this about you and let me check in. And that's such a wonderful way to stay accountable, but it's hard to be accountable to something that you're not aware of in yourself.
You know, one of the things from a student perspective, as you were asking me, I sat down with a young lady yesterday afternoon. And as we were going through her place profile, I said to her, there's 2 words that just keep jumping out as we were talking about who she was based on the profile. I said, you are bold and you are a defender. Those words just jumped out. She wanted to know what purpose, what career she might pursue based on who she was. She had never said this to me up to this point. She wants to be a lawyer, bold and a defender. And she had not told me that. And for her, it was like an unbelievable 15 years old that I got confirmed. Because I always say, as you know, what's the value today of you sitting down with me? And she said, just the confirmation that what I've thought and what I've talked to my parents about, someone else that didn't really know me that well actually took what probably are great qualities of a lawyer, bold and a defender. And so, again, I could go on and on.
We say this often that the profile gives us so much direction to understand people, but the words that they use, they speak through the language of who they are. And those 2 things combined help us know how to answer them. I was thinking back this morning to Colossians 4 verses 5 and 6, where it says, walk in wisdom towards outsiders, making the best use of time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. And I know when Paul's talking about this, he's talking about outsiders. So we think non-believers, but the principle is make the best use of time. And one of the ways that you do that is by knowing how you ought to answer everyone. And when you know who someone is, whether that is someone that you do life with or a parent knowing their child, you make the best use of the time that you have them in your home by knowing how you ought to answer them. And even when it says, let your conversation always be gracious, seasoned with salt, salt is a preservative, but it also adds flavor. And when you know how to answer somebody based off of who they are, it adds flavor to the conversation. It makes it more enticing. It makes it more flavorful. It makes it more enjoyable. But salt also acts as a preservative. And the more effective your conversations are, the more tasteful they are, the more gracious, the better you answer somebody based off of how you know who they are. You make the best use of time, but you also preserve your time and your relationship with them because you know how you ought to answer everyone. And oftentimes that is through who they are. That's by you knowing this person is bold, they're a defender, that preserved that moment and made it more flavorful in your conversation with her because you knew how to answer her, making the best use of the time that you had with her. In the same way that as a parent, you want to make the best use of the time that you have your kids in your home. And if you know them, you can have more salty, more flavorful conversations and moments with them that preserve that time and that relationship going forward.
Yeah, that's good.
So for students, you've mentioned it a little bit before through your conversations, what you've seen over time using this tool. What is the value that this experience with your parents, even specifically, could give to students?
Well, I'll give it something that happened yesterday. So there was a 13 and a senior in high school. She graduates next week. They did not want to go do the one-on-one. And their mom told me, because I met with her last night, the mom, and said, and the kids, as you know, some of them are meeting with their parents and some of them don't want their parents. And they wanted to do it just with me. But they didn't want to do it at all. Mom, why do we have to? I mean, and the mom was telling me they were like, and I'm used to that. It's not like first time I ever heard that one. Well, I did the graduating senior, and her mom was sitting back at the car because she had brought the 15-year-old to meet with me next. And the young lady went up, and mom said, well, how was it? And her daughter said, it was great. And I am assuming that the 15-year-old, but that I think that's been a lot of the value for this. You said for the students is I had one that said, and as you know, a lot of times when I have them talk, they speak through the lens of their spiritual gifting when they're talking about certain things, and like especially who they have passion for. And it was so neat. I always bring back, I listen to hear where they're speaking through the lens of their spiritual gift. And even it happened yesterday. You didn't even know you were using a spiritual gift, did you? No. How does that feel? Great to know that the way God made me is the way that He is using me, of what He gave me to make a difference. And that's been one of the great things. And but that's with students, but I actually heard that yesterday. So
we mentioned this verse a lot, Ephesians 2:10, where it says that we are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which He prepared beforehand for us to walk in. And I always say one of the best ways to discern and discover what those good works are that God created you for is by looking at your workmanship, where you have no idea where to start, when you have no idea what direction or purpose God has for your life, even though you know Scripture says that you have one. One of the best ways for students, whether you're middle school, high school, college, still trying to figure out what you want to do, one of the best ways to discover that those good works is to look at the workmanship. And I think that's a great value for students, whether they're, again, middle school, high school, or college. If you want to discover the good works that the Lord has for you, look at the workmanship that He designed you with, and let that give you confirmation, affirmation, or direction on where are those good works? What are those good works? How do I walk in what I think they are? And I think one of the best tools that this gives students is an opportunity to either get validated in where they think they ought to walk, or direction when they have no idea where to walk.
Yeah. So you know my ground rules. I have 3. You know what ground rule number 2 is, right?
White space is okay.
That's ground rule number 1.
Rambling is okay.
That's ground rule number 3.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Is okay.
And so I tell everyone, again, adult, I hear it more from students. But one of the great things that's happened is I had a person last week, 15, and I bet I heard it 25 times, just kind of like, I don't know, and just, but by the end of the conversation, she was crying, and she was still, I don't know. And her mother was with her. And I said, she's processing a lot more than she knows how to express it back to me. And I said, just remember that. There's a lot more going on. Because both parents, because I'd met last week with both parents individually, and both of them told me about her that you're going to probably get a lot of just blank stares and, in this case, I don't knows. But I said, there's a lot more happening inside of her that she is resonating with. And I hope that even when you may get at times frustrated, that you will remember there's a lot going on inside of her.
Obviously, you've sat down with even more students than we did just with this one weekend. Is there a certain age that you recommend students taking this initially for parents listening or students listening who aren't sure? Or does it just depend on the student?
I think it depends on the student. The family I told you last week, the 6th grader, she was explaining everything to mom and dad and her older sister. And she's in 6th grade, and she got it. I will say, though, Mary, that oftentimes when they are in middle school, they might not process as well. They may not be able to articulate back as well. This young lady was very articulate, but I still like it to start young because I think it gives, I've had parents say, there's nothing that we're really not knowing, but it is validating and being able to see it on paper. And that's why I think it is so helpful and to see the words that are written in the book about what that means. It really takes a lot of fogginess up here and really brings a lot of clarity to why their child is the way they are.
And I've heard you say this often as well, even with regards to me and Maggie, is that it gives you a baseline for who they are or who they're trying to be.
Yes.
So for instance, if a parent knows their child in a certain way and what shows up on paper isn't who they know their kid to be, that could be a telltale that maybe they are different at school versus at home, and I'm seeing them through a different lens. Or maybe they're trying to be someone who we know they truly aren't. And that goes back to that conversation about influence. Is it may not be your job to say, hey, this is wrong, this isn't who you are. But when you train up a child in the way that they should go, when you get to influence them and speak into their life, you can see maybe they aren't content with who they are. Maybe they're trying to be somebody else as opposed to being who they are. And you get to encourage them and train them up in the way that you think they truly are, the way that they're truly wired. And the paper, the profile can either confirm who you see them to be, or it shows there's some type of disconnect and I need to make the most of my time with them so that I can help encourage them to be content with who they truly are and really walk in that as opposed to trying to walk in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've done a ton of coaching with them. You've heard a lot of feedback. Is there any other feedback that you have found encouraging or interesting that you want to share?
Yeah. One of my coolest things that's happened through this is you met with the daughter, I met with the mom and the son, and then tomorrow I meet with the dad. But what they did is they took, when everyone went through the personality part, which is it'll be, for those of you that have been through PLACE, this will look very familiar. And they took this circle right here with their scores, and they put each one's score in every quadrant. Then they added up the task, the people, and they put mama, daddy, and then they listed the 2 kids' names in here. They have a marker board in their dining room with this up there. And every night, what they're doing is they are taking what we call the supplemental explanations. And every night they're taking a different one. How does my personality affect my emotions and how I control them? So they're taking their book, they're looking up at who they are, and they're having conversations every night. How does my personality affect my leadership role? How does it affect how I relate to other people? That's been a cool thing. I actually told them last week that I'm going to get them on video because it was so good. That needs to be told of how one family is using it. But there have been so many. I mean, like even when they left that first night, when we did it on that Friday night, the conversations that went on late after they left. The next day, I actually talked to one of the families a couple hours later, and they were at home still discussing it. And that's been neat, that watching them in the hallways, or when we were actually doing the weekend, when they were coming and showing their parents their different scores and that. So that's been cool. Can't tell I'm excited about it, are you?
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all. Hopefully it's coming through to y'all too. I was reminded of this verse in 1 Thessalonians 2:8 where it says, "So we cared for you because we loved you so much. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well." And I think parents sharing with their kids who they are is such a picture of them being willing to share their lives with their kids, their experiences, what their spiritual gifts are, what they're passionate about. Because I know from experience, and I think from watching other families, when the kid sees their parents' life experiences, when they understand who they are because the parent was willing to share that with them, when they know what their parents' spiritual gifts are, and they know when they're doing that at church, when they bring people into our home, I know that that's my dad, my parent using the spiritual gift of hospitality. And a parent being willing to share that part of their life with their kids, I think shows how the gospel is working through their life. And that's a picture that can be a way that a parent cares and loves their kid, is by sharing that part of their life with them, because it in turn not just shares their life, but as it says in this verse, they were willing not only to share the gospel of God by teaching, but share their life by showing what the gospel can look like when it works in your life and when you're willing to know your gifts, to give them away to the body of Christ. And I think that's such a beautiful picture that an experience like this allows a family to see and participate in, is the parents being willing to share their life with the kids so that the kid can see the picture of the gospel working in and through the lives of their parents.
Yeah.
So I have one more question because I know we probably got to wrap up.
Yeah, well, let's go. This one's been really fast.
It has. If you could give one piece of advice or encouragement to parents, what would it be?
Know your kids. And again, a tool like Place is a perfect tool to know them and be able to use it to validate them. I've heard this over and over from some of the parents that have watched me sit down with their kids, how I validated their kids. And so that would be my encouragement, is validate, this is my kid, validate your children, because there's so much out there in the world that they're not being validated, and they're telling them, you're not this, you're not that, you don't have this. Validate the way God created them. That would be my advice as it relates to even this conversation.
And oftentimes the world, and even a fear with a tool like this, is that instead of validating or affirming somebody, you're labeling them.
I had a pastor say that yesterday to me that I met with that's looking at implementing Place. And after we had the conversation, he was like so jazzed that that's not what Place does. So that's right on target.
Especially for students, the world does so much labeling of them, that you are this, you feel this, so you are this. You are a student, you are an athlete, you are what you do, you are what you produce. And for parents, for anyone that's thinking about even taking this assessment like a church leader, it's not about labeling. I doubt every conversation that you've talked about the affirmation that they felt, the validation. And even for parents wanting to use this as a tool in their homes, it's not meant to label your kid and tell them who they are or who they're not. It's meant to articulate and evaluate who God made them to be and how they can walk in that. So I wanted to dispel that fear. The world does plenty of labeling. This isn't meant to label you. It's meant to affirm who God created you to be so that you are more encouraged to walk in those ways.
Yeah, that's good.
And I would say my last advice for students, because I can't speak as much to the parents in the room, but I was reminded of Matthew 5:37, where it says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. That's one of the principal benefits of taking place. I think even as I was doing some coaching with students, some of them knew what they wanted to do. Some of them had no idea. And for both of them, what I encourage them to do is just say yes to opportunities. Let your yes be yes now, because it doesn't have to last forever. You can give a no after saying yes, but if you want to discover what your passions are, who you're passionate about, where you gravitate towards, the environment that you'll thrive in, it's hard to know if you haven't experienced it. So my encouragement to students was, in this season of your life, when you have time, when you have the opportunity, just let your yes be yes. Don't be afraid to give a yes, because in this season, you can't take it back. It only has to last for a season or a school year or a summer, whatever internship, job, or opportunity that you say yes to. So let your yes be yes, so that you can discover the environment that you thrive in. You can discover the passions that your heart gravitates towards. You can build upon those life experiences that are going to mold and propel you towards whatever it is that you want to do with your life. But in this season, start giving out some yeses so that you can discover where it is that you will thrive and where it is that you want to spend your time for the rest of your life. And let that yes be yes for a season. And in Ecclesiastes, there's a time and season for everything. Use the tool, use the language that it gives you to evaluate opportunities, to know if it should be a yes or no, and reflect on past experiences to know if that should be a future yes or why you let it be a no in the future.
That's good.
So I know that's all the time that we had for today. As Dad mentioned earlier, if you are a parent who's interested in this, if you're a leader who wants to bring this opportunity and experience into your church, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll put some of our material in the show notes of this episode so that you can look into it more, a link to our website. So please feel free to reach out. And if you are a parent that just wants to experience it with their kids, you can get our workbook, you can do it online. And we just encourage you to mold and use that time wisely. Let your conversations in your home be gracious and seasoned with salt, so that you may make the best use of the time that you have with whoever it is that the Lord has placed in this season of life with you.